Daddybear America, welcome to this episode. More older men are walking away from the dating scene and away from romance altogether. They're going it alone, as some people like to call it, and it's tragic. This is a multi-pronged attack on the male dating scene, gay dating scene, and we're going to dissect it in this episode. I'm Frank Schneider, my friends call me Fritz, and this is Daddybear America. So yes, it is true, older men are walking away from dating like never before. It used to be that they would at least give it a shot, even if it didn't always work out. And now they are sullen and confirmed in their own beliefs that dating is not for them, and they're going it alone. So before we dig into this is a great opportunity for me to tell you, if you like material that deals with topics like this, do me a favor, go down in the control center down there and the buttons and the bells and things and click subscribe, and if you click like as well, that helps the channel get distributed through the algorithm. It really helps us out. Comment down below if you have anything to say about your experiences in the dating scene with older men, or if you are an older man. Now let's dig into what the topic is today: older men leaving the dating scene and why. So yes, older men are walking away from the dating scene alone, and they are okay with this, as okay as you can be, being single, wanting romance, wanting sex and intimacy, but just not getting it. And this is really a multi-factor effect that has come down over the years, from the gay bars being eliminated and these newfangled apps that have come on the scene that are geared towards hookup culture, which is very youth-oriented, and older men are not really catered to by these apps, and frankly, the app administrators don't really care. So the result is men's places of opportunity have been closed down. They're left with these terrible, disgusting apps that cater to youth, and therefore, in a certain amount of frustration, the older men are just walking away from the dating scene altogether. They're alone, but for the most part, they're content. They're happy. They have their apartment or their home, their job, or they're retired. And they get to watch their TV shows and hang out with their friends, even if it isn't romantic, even if it isn't sex. Then they still get to live a fairly happy life. And I think the only people really disappointed are the men who would love to date these older men who aren't available to them anymore. I think one aspect to this that needs to be covered is that this is basically out of frustration that these men are walking away from the dating scene because of the flakiness of the people on the apps, which is a huge issue. If you've ever been on the dating apps, you've seen how people behave, how they will text you with interest one moment and then just drop you and move on, or not respond, or ghost you, or block you a moment later without explanation. And this is happening to older guys all over the place. So it's really an awful scene. And I can really frankly understand why an older man would just not be interested, even if somebody is only 1,200 feet away from them and is, like a horny pig bottom who's looking for, all the trashy things that these people write on there in 250 characters or less. And then they just text you something like, hey, or hi, or pics. and expect, like, why am I not getting a response here? Or more appropriately, the older man thinking, is this a real human being that thinks Pix is a reasonable, like, correspondence to somebody you've never met before? I mean, it's so flabbergasting, the youth and the way they, like, orient themselves and the way they address other people. It's shocking, really. But that happens a lot on these apps. So along with the apps, I mentioned also that the bars closed down. And I really expanded on this in the last episode where we talked about how men were being shut out of society, and specifically gay men. But if you want to go back and watch that episode, it's a great episode. But let's stay with the topic that we're talking about here. Gay bars have been closing down mainly because of the introduction of apps. And the purpose for a lot of gay bars was so that there was a gay community that could unite around a bar, and occasionally there would strike up some romance between two people, and they could date and maybe, get more serious sometimes. I'm not saying this is the best idea ever created by society, is that people meet at bars and, like, build relationships out of that. I had a friend a while ago who said, people you meet at bars are not your friends. They won't bail you out of, like, something, like, if you need help. They're not there for you. And from my experience, that is true. Because you met at a bar, that it introduces some frivolousness to your ultimate friendship. And even if it is a relationship, maybe you can pull a really decent relationship out of that. Comment down below if you've met somebody at a bar and made it into a full-blown relationship. I'm sure some of you have. But in my experience, not often. Now, I have had friendships that we met at a bar, and I mentioned him in the last episode. Joseph Brem, the bar owner of This Is It in Milwaukee, we were very good friends. We went out to dinner and lunch all the time. We were business partners. And he was a cute silver teddy bear, polar bear kind of guy with this big, deep, grovelly voice. And I just have a weakness in my heart for guys like that. He was a charming sweetheart of a man. He passed away in 2018, I believe. Anyway, I miss him dearly. But an example of a friendship that did work out that I met at a bar. Now, the reason I bring up the bars is because they all closed. And there's a few still hanging around, hanging on by a thread. But ultimately, our community, the gay community that was going to bars, patrons of the bars, they left and they stopped going because in order to get a date now, you go on these apps. And the apps are terrible. They're completely sex-oriented. It's an awful, awful existence if this is your medium for dating. Older guys know this. They know the world before apps, and they know the world that exists now. And so if you're giving them the choice of choose the apps or nothing, they choose nothing. So if you are an older man and you are staying in the sort of dating scene, it's pretty easy to feel like tokenism is playing a role here. Like you're the older guy and everyone's just sort of going along with your presence. Like, oh, well, that's the old guy. This is societal ageism. It's pretty terrible. But if you're an older man and you are on the dating scene, you're aware of this. It's like this constant sort of thing poking you that you're like, the ageism and the sort of disgust of so many of the younger people wishing you weren't there, clogging up their sex scene, their hookup scene where they're going to have frivolous, terrible sex with some stranger and think that's like wholesome love or something like that. And the older guys are wise to this, and they feel the societal judgment, and they don't want really to be a part of it. And the guys who are on these apps, it's only a matter of time before they say, you know what, this isn't worth it. I don't need this. And anybody who I meet on these apps, it's like we said about the bars. Anyone you meet at the bar isn't really your friend. Anyone you meet on these apps, they probably aren't your friend. So, in my past, I tell you guys fairly frequently, I've had a number of dates and I've had a number of relationships. And I think what's unique about my stories is that while, yes, I've had a number of relationships, they were all fulfilling in their own way, and I got what I wanted out of these various relationships with these men, and they ended up better having been with me as well. So we got to help each other, and then ultimately with these relationships, you go your separate ways. Some of them, in the meantime, have decided to just be alone and find some solitude in the art of being alone, not seeking relationships anymore. Now, it helps that these men were in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, so they're not terribly horny anymore, and that is a major drive for wanting to find a relationship, is to find an outlet for all of this semen that you're producing. Sorry, but that just is a factor for a lot of men. Now, if you're an older man, that's just not a factor anymore. You're just not producing, and you're not producing testosterone. You're not very horny. So finding mutual friendship through creative endeavors or social endeavors that don't involve romance is way more possible and frequent if you're an older man. And a lot of my older friends, while they've resolved to probably not have a romantic relationship, and if you get to talking to them about it, they'll tell you quite honestly about the terrible experiences dating younger men that they've had. That a lot of younger men can't pick their faces up out of their phones long enough to give an older man attention. And this is also a factor for older men too. I've told you that I have had that problem with Bill, where when we first met, he would take phone calls when we went out to dinner on Friday nights. And I said, Bill, you have to stop taking phone calls when we're having dinner. This is a date, and you're like having like a 15-minute conversation with some, like usually a client, but like on a Friday night at 7 p.m., really? You can't wait? And this is also the younger men. And they're doing the Twitters and the Facebooks and the Instagrams or whatever, and they should be paying attention to the guy across the table from them. And so when I talk to older men, they often tell me stories about these terrible dating situations they've been on. So it's just not a great situation to find yourself in. If you're an older man, you're finding all of this flakiness. People won't commit to meeting up. If they do, they meet up and then they're staring at their cell phone the whole time or making phone calls. What are you going to do? So one thing that we could do is have a place for older men to meet older men. And, within the category of older men, you still get a vast age difference. So while I'm considered an older man, now that I'm 45, I can still date somebody 75, like, for example, Bill, who I happen to be married to. But if I were single, I could go to an event where there's older men, and I am an older man, and I would find potentially somebody who's 65. So the solution really is events bridging and for older men to meet even older men. And ideally, this would be high quality men that are interested in potential romance and high quality dates and high quality people. And by high quality, I basically mean not flakes, have jobs, have like a financial status, like a credit rating that isn't 500. Basically, somebody who's accountable and responsible, and then you could date them. They can carry on a conversation. And hopefully they aren't some twat that can boil down like some political event halfway around the world down to 1 or 2 sentences about who they think should live or die. So, as I mentioned in the past episode, there are SAGE events in various places. Many states have these. There's also older men meetups, gay older men meetups that you can find on the website, meetup.com. There's a number of different ways that gay older men can meet. And within the older men category, like I said, there's a huge variation in age group. And so therefore, you could potentially meet a really great guy at an older meetup. I think it's really important to meet people face to face. I think it's important to have a vast group of people that are meeting, and that so that you have sort of a good repertoire of people to have open conversation with, different input, and then ultimately potentially meeting somebody who you think is interesting, that you can carry on a conversation with, that you want to spend time with, and maybe, have some romance, take your clothes off, touch each other, and ultimately somebody you feel comfortable with taking your clothes off and touching each other with. So I think to close out this topic, what's important is, I think I've made this clear, but the older men here are not the broken part of this scenario. The system is, and if anything, I would accuse the younger people of dropping the ball here and really letting a system fall into absolute shit. The apps are garbage. The websites were always garbage. I tried to build one. I tried to make something that was more wholesome. It turns out people don't want wholesome. They don't want better. They want sex. They want the lowest common denominator. That they want just this garbage experience. So to some extent, that falls on the shoulders of the people who like this and who aren't getting the dates from these very attractive older men who have decided they are no longer willing to put up with this. So, yes, it is the system that is broken. It is not these older men who have decided not to contribute anymore to this system. So, frankly, I can't blame them. And so if you are one of these guys who is watching, comment down below your experiences on the dating scene, why you decided maybe you don't want to date anymore. I know there's a lot of you out there. I've talked to you personally, so I know that there's plenty of stories out there, and horror stories about the dating scene, about just bad expectations, things that can go wrong on a date. Maybe there's just honest mistakes that are happening between two people and it just doesn't work out. Maybe the chemistry isn't right, and maybe somebody doesn't like kissing and the other person does, or somebody really likes anal and is a total pig bottom and the other's a side. And side is becoming sort of my new favorite term, especially I've seen it used self-appointed by older men who decide, what, all of it, this top-bottom stuff isn't for me. So if that's one of you guys, comment down below as well. I think it's a really interesting topic and a sort of change in the way guys are comporting themselves. Anyway. So if you enjoyed this material, do me a favor, click the subscribe button, and while you're down there, click the like button. It'll be our secret. I won't tell anybody if you don't tell anybody. Also, there is a join button down there, and clicking the join button directly infuses my channel with a little bit of money, about the price of a cup of coffee. And it helps for me to buy equipment like this brand new light here, and also to write fresh material for you guys on a weekly basis. We are now coming out with episodes on Tuesdays and Fridays, so look out for those. And mostly I am only able to make this material for you guys because of our supporting members. At this moment, I would like to thank all of you who have taken a moment and donated a little bit of your hard-earned money to support this channel and the message that older men and younger men belong together and deserve the support of their community to do so. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next episode. Peace. All right, I think that went well.